podcast from Joanna Mike I think it's really cool, and that is what I wanted to say.
Two and a mic. Work has allowed me to get to know lots of interesting people of different genders and ages, cultures and sectors, beliefs and traditions, and I have been enriched by all of these experiences. In deciding to make people and society the focal points of my podcast, I have obviously availed myself of the widest possible selection of topics, and human resources in a business context therefore fits right into the middle of that. I'm joined by Helga, an HR manager with years and years of experience across sectors and across several cultures. She conducts her work in an international environment, speaks a number of different languages, and is familiar with organizational styles and structures that I could only guess at. In our first chat on the topic of managing people at work, Helga and I catch up on some of the more direct changes over the last few years, and also on what companies have missed out on, where opportunities have presented themselves and have politely been ignored. Thank you, Helga, for your time, and I look forward, of course, to our next chat. Enjoy. I am joined by Helga Niola from Milan, with whom I haven't had the chance to speak for a number of years. Helga, thank you very much for your time.
Oh, thank you to you, Zach. I'm very happy that we had this opportunity to see you again. And thanks, because what I learned about English was with you.
Actually, you were pretty good before, but I have to say, I always looked forward to our chats while we were working together, because we would start on a topic and then we would get into the real sort of belly of the beast. We got deeper into topics. We kind of brought in our individual interests, and very quickly we found out that we had very similar thoughts on some subjects, even though other times we disagreed. But we had very interesting conversations, didn't we?
Oh, that's absolutely true. It was very interesting, because what was interesting, I would like to underline again, it was that we were talking about some topics, relevant topics, and we discovered that in the main lines, we agreed. But after, of course, it's the personal point of view, is what you are living, it's also what you are doing in terms of job. So a different, vision of the things, the point of view, I would like to say. But basically, in the main lines, we agreed. So it was like, oh, you think the same? Yeah. Are you seeing the same? Yeah. Are you observing the same? Yes, it's true. Even if we are doing different jobs, different lives, we live in different countries with different cultures. So I think this is what is really exciting. I would like to say also in my job, and I think in yours, because we work with humans. So
yeah, exactly. And this is one of the main, I think, points that we discovered very quickly about one another, is we love people. We have a passion for people. Even though we operate in different sectors, as it were, but there are many points where our jobs meet. So training, educating, helping people to develop, and so on. Me as an external assistant, you very much as an internal manager. How important has it been for you? Because we've talked about this I can't remember how many years ago. To be a successful human resources manager, or whatever term each individual company calls that position, how important is it really to have a passion for helping other people?
Oh, it's the basic of the basic of the basic. Why I'm saying that, underlying 3 times, because sometimes, the idea of, in particular, the younger people, because sometimes I do masters, something like that at the beginning. So I'm more involved. Just to introduce myself a little bit, but just make you understand. I had the opportunity to have a global picture of the HR at the beginning of my career. And after, I started to be more vertical on the talent acquisition, engagement, and employer branding. It is more really focused on, helping people to find the job of their dreams, let's say. But what was interesting, I think, is that they have this romantic idea about HR, So they have this idea, in particular talent acquisition. Oh, wonderful! I can learn a lot. Meeting people, different cultures, because normally those kind of roles in multinational companies. I've been experimenting for more than 14 years. Oh my God, I just realized that. But just to be on track. So they have this romantic idea, no? We meet people, we do things, blah blah blah. We talk a lot. That's it. It's absolutely not like this. Of course, you have to talk with people. Of course, you have to be curious, as you said, to understand better than sometimes people even they think they know about what they really need, those kind of things. And after, you have to match with the company, because never, forgot this. It's a relevant point. A company normally has to do money, So you have to match both. You have to find a way to make the life easier of the people every day at work, to help them to find a way to be, happy about what they're doing every day, and to help them to develop themselves. So, and at the same time, you're working in the company in any case. So you have your projects, your goals that you have to reach as a company. So it's very difficult. It's a role that is like, you're always feeling like, that you are dancing in a way, and you have to pay attention to the music, you have to pay attention to the steps, what we are doing at the same time, to create a nice experience. So from this perspective, I would like to say that, yes, you have to have a big passion on this, because without, it's absolutely not at all possible. And you can find your happiness every day. And honestly, I found it. And sometimes it's not easy, I would say. It's a work that you do on a daily basis. But when you find your way, it's absolutely, honestly, the most wonderful work in the world, I would say.
Working with people in human resources.
Yeah, because you see, if I can just close, but this is important, you can see the impact and the difference that you can bring both to the company in terms of results, and to the people in terms of helping them to be happy at work and to find their way, to find their, meaning of the things. And you can't imagine the level of satisfaction that you can have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember reading recently, it was from an article on LinkedIn, which was connected to the research by a PhD candidate. And she had written that the most important element of leadership is empathy. And this appears to be very much in line with what you're saying about how you can guide people. And I've often felt that the job of a manager is not to shout at people and to tell them do this and do that. It's to guide them towards a successful outcome, which is satisfactory for all involved. And I think empathy has to be the foundation of that.
Yeah, and more. What is interesting, and thanks for raising up this topic, that I can see, I would say, in the daily basis, right? When we open, a position for a senior manager, or a manager, not really, VIPs, but also under those levels. And for example, now I'm working in a company that is focused on IT profiles, so very technical, let's say, in financial services. And the first requirement, it's not the technical skills, knowledge, not at all. The first one is empathy and the capacity, the fact that you are able to manage people, to create bounce a relationship with your people and your stakeholders. Because let's keep in mind that a manager is not only, let's say, to manage the people, but to manage the relationship with the stakeholders internally, externally sometimes, like for example, about myself. It's pretty complicated, I would say, because you have internal stakeholders, external stakeholders, you have your team to manage, international teams. So what is interesting is this. The first requirement is this, and after you have a lot of other requirements, of course, you have technical skills, you have I don't know, languages. You have, I would say also, you have to be open-minded, many other relevant things. But the first thing is to have this, the skill that is the basic nowadays. So more and more, even if you are, I don't know, looking for a very technical profile, the hiring manager always say, yes, but Helga, please, because we need this person will be, a member of a team. The project is done by the team. So even if it's not a manager, but if it's a manager, it's even more important. I would say also another thing. I think I'm adding many things on the table, but it's important. With the digitalization of the processes, something that started even before the pandemic crisis, and after, if you want, we can go through. But nowadays, a lot of tasks, very operational, are basically done by machines, or, we are trying to do our best, to automatize as much as we can. So it means that more and more the people that we are recruiting, or in any case, people that are starting to work in a company, we assume that many of these tasks, in any case, will be done by machines. So we are more and more interested on other skills that are not this technical, like to do, I don't know, calculations by hands or those kind of things. So you can be a nerd, let's say, alone in your room, sitting down, doing the things alone. This is something that is disappearing more and more. So you need to have this capacity, you need to have this empathy, and this is something that is, more and more asked from the company for all the roles. So this, I think, it's a relevant point.
Yeah, when we first met, you were working in the hospitality sector. So now you've switched to IT and finance. The two are very different, but of course, the continuity of the issue is people. So has it been easy for you to switch?
Honestly, not at all.
Okay.
On the if I see the big picture, of course, I would say that it's the same. So the main things happening, the main requirements from people, the main goals from the company are the same. So we are, in any case, in a very, very, rushing business, as the hospitality sector is. Their, needs are more the same, let's say. So the needs of the people, so they need to be listened to, they need to find a way to develop themselves, they are asking to be considered, and their well-being considered, how to organize, their life, their work, the work-life balance. Again, in different sectors, but it's the same. In hospitality is more like, oh, I have to work, I don't know, for months outside my house, how I can, maintain my bonds, relationship, my well-being I have always with the customer. So it's not simple. In IT, you have the same issues. So my well-being, because I'm an IT guy, for example, so I have to code, I don't know how many hours by day. I need to maintain my relationship with my team, and so and in my life. So how we can help them, with customers all around the world. So sometimes you have 24 hours because the world, you have always a country that is connected because it's like that. So how we can fix this? How we can help them? How we can help them to, when it's the time to stop, really to stop. And this is something that is, I think, you can take in all the business of the world nowadays, because this is the relevant point, how I can stop. And I would say, as a manager, as responsibility like this, it's another relevant point. The company can help you with policies, like, for example, where I'm working nowadays, there is an agile working model in place, very clear in terms of how you can work remotely, by your house, by another country. There are some rules, of course, to maintain a balance between, okay, it's not working, but not full remote, because it risks to be very, at the end of the day, it's not good for your sanity, mentally, health. But what I would like to say, This is a very relevant point. We have really to pay attention. And in my daily base, sometimes you have to do this effort. You have to find your way to say stop, because you are a human. You can't be connected 24 hours by day. It's not at all, it's not correct for you. It's not good for your health. It's not good because you are not productive. Your brain, our brain, it's a machine from a perspective, but it's not a machine. So if you need to be also, in a way, your work needs your creativity, skills, you need your time to disconnect from LinkedIn, from from the emails, from Teams, from whatever, to go outside, to have a walk in a park, to read a book, to do other things. And I don't know you, Zach, but from my perspective, my better ideas came when I was in a park reading a book, doing things completely different. So we need this because we are humans. This is a very relevant point to continue to think and to be focused on the fact that machines, and if you want, we can start to talk also about artificial intelligence. It's something that we use to do the things better and more efficiently, whatever. But we are the humans, and we have to manage the process in itself. We are using those machines. Don't be used by the machines, please.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, just to give a simple and silly example of how it happens very often to people when you want to remember a word, the more you focus on that word, the more difficult it becomes to remember it. Stop thinking about the word, do something else, the word will come to you. And I think this is comparable to the situation that you just said. So your best ideas came to you while you were reading or you were outside going for a walk. We function better when sometimes we allow our brain muscle to relax, when we allow ourselves to simply enjoy the moment and not to be too focused on something which is perhaps a bit challenging at the time, and then results can come. It's not always the case. It's nice to have some pressure, but at times we need to relieve that pressure to be truthfully effective and productive.
True. And another thing that is sometimes I think really underestimated, that the bonds and the relationship that we have with people in the company sometimes are really underestimated, I think. You have to spend your time to create your relationships, to maintain your relationships, qualitative relationships, because we are starting to have this idea that we are like machines. Again, we are not. We really needed to be in relationship with people. And sometimes we found, I have a lot of examples, and I had one just a few days ago. If I didn't have this really good relationship with this person, I won't reach my goal. Absolutely not. Because we have completely different approach. In this case in particular, we have two completely different approaches on the things. So the fact that I know her, that I, in any case, take the time to build a relationship, we find a way, and we found out a solution together. But without this, due to the fact that we have completely different personality, it couldn't work. And I know that with other people, she has problems, and the other people are not reaching their goals about that. So we have to, I think, to be very focused on this. Relationships are the most relevant thing. But, if you saw a movie like Wolf of Wall Street or those kind of movies, not it is about financial, companies, whatever, you can see how they do deals of, I don't know how many billions of dollars or whatever, just because they like each other, just because of, like this, and I like you, and I think you can give me what I want. And it's something that is based on nothing by written, nothing related on numbers, nothing related on this. No. It's really what you are feeling. And sometimes in recruitment, we have also this. if you want.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we kind of yeah, sort of touched on this earlier as well, because yeah, there are so many topics to talk about that we really, we're not going to do them justice by trying to cover them all in a single podcast. So yeah, happily, you've kind of hinted that you will be available for future episodes as well, and that we could talk more.
Absolutely, yes. For me, it's like to be, on a couch with a tea, something like that, as we did for years. So with great pleasure, absolutely, yes. There are so many things, and I think that I would like to add also this on the table. I think there are so many things that we have to discuss to have really a picture of what is happening nowadays. Because unfortunately, there is still this idea to simplify everything, no? I don't know, with the pandemic crisis, to simplify and say, we have this problem that is related with this, and the fact that, I don't know, you have or you don't have a good connection on internet. I'm sorry, this is not a problem, and everything starting even before. If you didn't digitalize your process before, and you came in something absolutely unexpected like this, you are not prepared. You have to do everything from scratch. And from a company perspective, it was very difficult. Thanks to that, I was in a company that was already prepared. So it was not, a nightmare from the perspective, but I know that from other companies, it was really a nightmare. So I have the impression, to come back, that sometimes we simplify too much. If you see on LinkedIn, some discussions are very, very basic, not and I'm even talking about, some colleagues, so other HRs. I don't know, this trend to simplify too much. I think that you have really to understand what is happening from the social perspective, economics perspective, and after you can understand the trends of your employees and your potential candidates. If you simplify too much, you can't be successful, because humans are not so simple. So you need really to understand the basic dynamics. So I'm listening a lot about talking about quiet quitting, why it's happening, why it's not only about Generation Z, why also millennials are starting, but what is happening, like we are not understanding what is happening. But if you are curious, if you are empathetic, if you understood, this is not relevant part, this is a part of your job to understand what is happening at social level, what is happening at economics level. If you don't have this, skills of capacity to anticipate in a way and to read your reality, of course that you have this impression like, what is happening? What the hell? What is happening? I'm not understanding. It's incredible, blah, blah, blah. No, it's not incredible. The story from this perspective can teach a lot, you know what I mean? So it's not something unexpected. Honestly, it's absolutely not. And if you want, I can do a prediction of what can happen. It's already happening, but in the next future, let's stop to think that one of the reasons why people would decide to join a company because of their development in terms of career. They are interested to develop in terms of their skills. It's different. So the idea, and I'm one of these people, hey, I changed my idea because the pandemic crisis changed our vision of the things. And imagine in particular for younger people, because they already understood before. I am a member of the generation, I can say it's not a problem, I'm 45 years old. And I had this, idea to work hard, work harder, and, to build your career, you can reach your goals, you can take very interesting positions. I also mentioned this, very interesting, salaries, conditions, blah, blah, blah. But for young people, they know that first, it's not possible to start in a company and to stay for years and years, because it's not. The reality is completely different. Second, they see that the reality in terms of economics, it's continuously changing, it's very fast. So Don't be too much focused on one company or too much focused on those kind of things, because can change from an A to another one. That's why they have this approach, like, I want to build my career in terms of my skills, because this is something that is very useful for me. Create satisfaction first. It's very important. Second, I can be successful, because in any case, technical skills, are so, I don't have a word to describe, but they are very fast. In 1 year, 2 years, I already finished.
They're obsolete.
Thanks a lot. They are obsolete. Nowadays is your capacity to build your skills. It's not the skills in itself. So they understood all those things before. So that's why they are saying, okay, I will invest myself in a company that want to invest in my development from this perspective. That is a matching, and this, when there is a matching in terms of values, in terms of my idea of well-being, my idea of how to match real life, let's say, with working conditions. I don't want, because it's stupid, honestly, to sacrifice all my life for a company, because things are changing so fast. But it's something that for my generation, we just realized, thanks, I would like to say thank you for the pandemic. At the end of the day, it was something that really opened my eyes, and now I understood this. And I am saying that other people of my generation, or even older than me, they are understanding this, because it changed completely your point of view. If you don't, as an HR, sorry, step back, if you don't understand this, you can't understand why nowadays we have so relevant problems in terms of retention people, and not only the younger. Retention, attraction, engagement of our people, because it's linked to this.
Yeah, I think this is something that we perhaps in some ways, obviously you'll tell me if I'm wrong, but in some ways we learned this from the younger generation, from the generation that followed after us, because they said, well, 1 minute, I don't want to have an extra 20K a year, perhaps. I don't want to have this long career. I don't want to work until 10 o'clock at night. I want to have fun. My parents have always told me, enjoy it while you can. And so I'm not going to jump from university, where I had a great time, into my first or second job, and then just basically lose contact with the lifestyle that I really enjoyed. And I think we've learned that from them, haven't we?
Oh, I totally agree. Honestly, totally agree. Because I'm the first one working for, hours and hours during the night, and and I just realized this. So again, I already understood their point of view, because I work a lot with, in particular, Generation Z. In my previous working experience was very interesting, because it was an observatory of the reality. It's not what we imagine about that, what we think about that, standardized things that you have to take and throw in the garbage, because if you think with standardization, you wouldn't understand the reality. But one thing is to understand them and to say, yes, I fully understand their point of view. Another thing is to live personally something that touched so much you and the conditions that you had, because of the fact that you lived in another, era, let's say. It's completely different. So it was like, when I say that pandemic from this perspective was really thanks to God that arrived the pandemic. Don't get me wrong, very sad, a lot of people died. So please don't get me wrong. But from the perspective of a global experience, let's say, at the end of the day, it was very helpful, because we was forced to live something like this. It was like to live a war, honestly. And to understand those things. And if without this, believe me, I think I wouldn't change my ideas. I wouldn't change my approach to the things.
Yeah, I think the situation was obviously, as you say, very dire, and people should also remember that you're from Milan, or the area around Milan and Bergamo, where in Europe this was the epicenter. This is where it kind of first started in Europe. And so I do remember how in Lombardia it was extremely heavily hit hospitals were overawed and so on. So yeah, people will obviously should take into account that you have experienced this yourself very, very personally. But this was a reset, as you say. This was an economic, a social, perhaps sometimes even a political reset. I don't believe society has fully taken advantage of the opportunities presented to us. I think we are still a few stages behind where we should be. But this is why listening to people who work in the management of human resources is so important, because you can predict trends, you can predict, and not only just predict, but actually see and observe what people really want and need, what the market really wants and needs. And this is why I say we're still a bit reluctant. Our senior management is a bit too conservative. We don't really want to perhaps invest in those kinds of areas. I think we need to listen to these kinds of words and principles and projects a bit better than we are at the moment.
I agree. I just I was thinking while you were saying that it's absolutely correct at 150%. But I remember that I was listening to the radio just a few days ago, and they were discussing about the smart working. And in particular, the fact that in USA nowadays, the main important companies, financial service like JP Morgan, whatever, they are doing a very big step back from that perspective, and they are saying, "Oh, guys, basically, we joked, and now come on, come again in the office because we are not productive." I was shocked. I was like, "You are joking?" Because you can't. Because I remember, just I think it's important to step back on this. I remember during the pandemic crisis, a lot of companies, also big companies, relevant companies, they say, "Oh my God, now we have to put in place smart working. We don't have it, blah blah blah." And when they did it, they do a lot of big campaign of communication, like how, because we take care about our people, we understood the situation, blah blah blah. So we put in place the smart working, and we are seeing that it's very good, it's going very good, it's productive, blah blah blah. And how after you do a step back, you have to imagine that you are doing a big fail first in terms of external communication, generally speaking. Secondly, you are doing a big fail in terms of HR communication, because are you serious? So you are saying to your people or your potential candidate that you said one thing just 1.5 years ago, we take care, keep safe, work-life balance, all those kind of things. So we put in place this. And after we're saying, "Oh, guys, we joked," you know what I mean? So what we said, it's one of the first things when you are working with humans is to be coherent. It means that you are not coherent with your values. It means that you use this selling approach that you can't use with humans. No. This is the most important thing in communication, HR communication in particular. If you have not this very clear idea about who you are, the values, and how to make live the values, you are finished as a company from this perspective. And this is what happened, and this is the relevant difference between the situation that we have nowadays and in the past. Even if you have a very big brand, very well-known, reputed, whatever, you can lose this from one day to the day after, because the communication is completely changed. The people are very interested and very focused on your reputation and what you are saying. And in particular, younger generation, they are they pay a lot of attention on this. They are not really, really attracted by this big communication, spending a lot of money, blah, blah, blah. They will ask you, you said that your value is, corporate responsibility. You are very, focused on corporate responsibility. What are you doing to do this? In details, because they are really interested in this, because they believe in these kind of things. And honestly, I would say again, thanks to God that we arrived to this point. It's very important that you are aligned with the values of the company and that you see that your company is putting in the reality what it's saying. Without this, and you can't reach your goal again because it's linked to the business. It's something that sometimes it's difficult to make understand to the management team. Is to say, if you want to reach your goal, you have to pay attention on this because it's linked. Because if the people are very engaged because they believe on what the company is saying, they will give you the 150% because they believe in what they are doing. It is different than doing the job of your dream or to continue to follow the idea to have the job of your dream. It's not the same.
Yeah, clearly. And I think it's very, very interesting also when you mention corporate responsibility or corporate social responsibility in some cases as well, because clearly, on the one hand, there was an intention to lead the conversation of corporate responsibility. But on the other hand, it's the need to prioritize financial interests. And so when you have a banking institution like JP Morgan, perhaps, they also realize that they've got a lot of money tied up in office buildings, in property portfolios. And if people no longer have to go to these offices lose value. The city loses value. And therefore they lose potentially a lot of money as well. And there are obviously associated businesses, whether regards to sort of the food industry for feeding office workers, or if it's the car industry for people who have to buy a car to drive somewhere, or if it's the petrol industry for people to fill up their cars to allow them to drive to these city centers and so on. So there are a lot of associated costs, and perhaps they look at their longer term sort of financial statements as a result. But I'm with you, and recently I was also thinking about some of the changes that are happening now in Berlin. So unfortunately, the local elections here resulted in a conservative government coming into the city of Berlin, and straight away they have introduced policies to prioritize cars. And the observation that I made is that cities are no longer places for people. Cities are places for cars. And they shouldn't be based on cars. They should be based on people's lives, livability. And I think this is all connected to the responsibility that organizations should have within the ecosystem of a human community.
Absolutely agree. We risk to lose, honestly, an opportunity, because it was an opportunity to change, because the story, again, you can learn from this story, no? You can't, you can't stop, or it's better if you don't stop and you say, okay, no, but let's continue to do in this way, like let's continue to invest in carbons, industry, because listen, if you cut the carbon industry, how we can manage the economic, but we cut it in the past, the carbon industries, because we started to open to new kind of businesses. So sorry, this is life, this is the story, this is economics, that's change. So we are risking to lose this opportunity to start to do the same and starting to invest more in new kind of businesses that are more linked to environment, for example. So just mention this because I think that we, if I'm not wrong, we discussed about this as well. Mm-hmm. You mentioned the prices of buildings and the food industries, that of course it's around this. But let's talk how much it costs to live in a big city nowadays. Let's mention Europe, Milan, Berlin, London. It's insane. The prices are insane. So nowadays, and not only the city centers, because in the past was, okay, in the city center, it's impossible, but no, let's find something in the neighborhood or whatever. Now it became impossible in any case. The prices are insane. The prices of the house, the prices of the food, because of the situation. And we have a lot of cars, as you mentioned. The cities are really made for cars. And imagine in Italy, for example, sorry, but I have to mention this. In Italy, let's talk about Milan. Milan It's a very, very ancient city. So it was not done for the cars. So it's a very relevant problem from this perspective. And every time that we try, to implement our underground lines or whatever, there are a lot of problems. And one of the problem that we have in Milan, in Rome as well, we start to do the works, and we find something that we can't touch because it's something that's Romanian, that comes from Rome history, ancient, so you can't touch. So it's something that we need to solve, because we risk at a certain point that Milan will be a city just for rich people, and I don't know, for represent the big companies, and that's it. So we have to rethink to this. And it's an opportunity. Why I say it's an opportunity? It's an opportunity because we can invest in another part of the countries. So many people with the smart working or agile working policies or whatever decided to live in other cities, decided to live, because with the same price, you can have a house that is bigger with, I don't know, outside,
trees, grass, flowers.
Grass. Yeah, we are humans. We need this, not to be like, little mouses or hamster in 70 meters, and it's not. So, and we can, work on the economic, of those cities. So we need to change the point of view. This is the point. Change the point of view. And if people have more money in their pocket, because they are not spending 20 euros by day to eat something outside in 10 minutes, it's a little, something very, they can spend more money to go outside in the evening to the restaurant. So it's just to change the point of view. But we are lazy. It's our nature, I think.
We're creatures of habit. Yeah, we are. If we've done something all our lives, we find a certain comfort and authority within that repetition. And I was reading an article the other day that said that the human mind doesn't allow us to learn from our mistakes because we are so fixated on repeating what we've always done. Even if that leads to failure, we feel that, but it's not my fault. Even though I'm doing the same thing, I expect a different outcome, and that's not necessarily the case. We have to train our brains to realize we have to do something different if we want to achieve a different outcome. And this sometimes takes a huge amount of effort that we're not necessarily willing to put in.
Because it's always the same. The first thing to understand about humans is that we don't want to put ourselves in discussion. It's not because we don't want, it's not correct 100%, but because we have this chip in our brain, and this is something that we discuss many times, that HR always saying, again, or when you do some training, the management skills, whatever, we always repeat. But one thing is to be conscious about that, to know. Another thing is to live this on the daily basis. When you do this click, everything's changed completely. Change completely your approach, I would say, not only to work, to life, and change completely the satisfaction to reach your goal, because you will say, oh God, I'm more successful than before in everything I do, even in discussion, for example, with your husband or your wife. It's not only related to work. If I change my approach, maybe I will have, as you said, an outcome that is completely different. So I think this is the key to understand people, and to understand the fact, again, we are not machine. If you continue to think ourselves as machine, we will fail in management people, in management our relationship, everything. It will fail. We are humans at the end of the day. We have to remind this, and this is our force, and this is what we will have as this, power and strong point when I would say in the next future, but it's already happening with artificial intelligence. This is the point. We have to keep in mind what is the difference between humans and machines. I'm a fan of artificial intelligence. I'm using ChatGPT on a daily basis, for work. It's very useful. At the end of the day, I'm the human, and I have the big picture of what I would like to do of my project. I use this in some part of this because, I can do faster. It's more successful from this perspective, but I'm the human. I have a clear idea of the vision of the thing. I think this is the key to understand. We are the humans, we have the vision because we can, we can predict the impact of the main things and the impact of the relationship and the impact on the other people because we are humans. So this is very important. So sometimes I listen to someone that is afraid about this. I risk to lose my job. Not at all. Some jobs will disappear, of course, but we will create other kind of job, as already happened in the past. Again, it's linked to what we discussed before. So we have to continue to be focused on this. So I listen to a lot of conversations, but also high level about this, like, we have to be afraid about this. No, you don't have to be afraid. Not at all. And in any case, we can't stop this.
A lot of big sort of names in IT and tech industry have spoken out about artificial intelligence. Some of them are concerned. Some of them say that no, there's no problem. It really depends on the area in which artificial intelligence operates. I do remember a few years ago that I think 100 IT business leaders wrote a letter to the UN saying, please do not allow artificial intelligent weapon systems to be able to make the decision to shoot and kill in a hostile environment. The decision to fire should always be taken by a human being. I mean, and this is the sharper end of that concept of artificial intelligence. Should we fear it or not? At the moment, we continue to be in command, as it were, of the argument. But if the concept of super intelligence, which is perhaps the next level, comes in, then maybe the discussion changes a little bit. But we're not there yet. So
I agree. But we have to plant the seeds starting from now.
True, absolutely.
And that's why it's important to start from now. And we are already late, let me say, to put really clear rules. And those rules has to be implemented globally. And this is another relevant topic, I think. And the fact that we are global from the business point of view for what it's interesting, for us, for the money, but we are not thinking, not at all, globally for these very relevant topics. We are not able. We are even, please, I don't want to mention what is happening in European Union, but because we are ridiculous, honestly. We are in different countries, we have the same money, but we have some rules. But at the end of the day, when you have to take a decision that has, European decision, it's always a mess. But we really need to understand that there are some topics where we have to take a decision, and this is the decision that we'll take for all the countries that are in European Union. If we're talking about artificial intelligence and potential impacts of artificial intelligence, environment, well-being, immigration, all these kind of things and these kind of topics has to be decided globally.
Yeah, there has to be this, not only the intention, but the willingness to accept and adhere to international targets. But we can see with the UN's Sustainable Development Goals and Agenda 2030 that even though a lot of countries are aware and do accept that we are facing catastrophic climate change, they refuse to make significant changes. And I mean, this is something though that we can talk about in the future, because I want to talk with you also about lots of different issues which are also connected to both the management of human resources, culture, identity within an organization, which are topics that we've touched on in the past. But also a big element within sustainability is also gender equality. And I do remember when I lived in Italy that gender equality was also a big discussion back then. But I think that now, because we've reached already a certain time limit, I would like to go into more detail about these topics, because I think they are topics that deserve greater focus and more attention. Helga, it's always great to listen to you. Thank you very much for coming and joining me on a Saturday. People have to realize it's a Saturday, this is a weekend. But for me, it's always great and fun to listen to your words, your wisdom, and your experience. So thank you very much.
Oh, Zach, thank you to you. As always, it's always interesting to talk with you. You have this capacity to jump from one thing to another one. For me, it's like to have discussion. Sorry, but I have to say to everyone, for me, it's like to, we are discussing as with a friend on the sofa, as I mentioned, on coach with, so with a cup of tea. So I have this impression, and it's always really a pleasure. And of course, if we want to have, other discussion to go deeper in some topics, I will be very, very happy to participate. And, it's my passion. So that's why for me, it's so interesting to have the opportunity to go deeper. And well, if someone has some questions, please raise. I'll be more than happy, to answer or to go deeper in some topic. Thanks a lot, and well, have an amazing weekend.
Thank you. Ciao, Helga.
See you. Bye.